What if the Batman myth originated in a totally different era and setting? What if the Bat chose to separate from the Wayne bloodline? Batman? Aztec? Empires collide. It seems to answer that question by sending us on a journey through pre-Hispanic Mexico, using gods from the Pantheon as the basis for its story. Mexica during the arrival of the Spanish. In this video, we analyze these entities and their roles in the movie and discuss the clear cultural differences in the story. I'll explain the adaptation's ending and the reason behind it. It makes sense. And if we pay close enough attention, we'll notice that destiny was already written before Quetzalcoatl's adventure even began. Welcome to a new video on NEGAYO's channel, to this little-known section that I like to call Exploring the Multiverse. I hope you enjoy today's analysis, and your support means a lot to me. Subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated on new content. Another perspective. While Aztec Batman draws on real historical events, it's important to note the movie isn't historically accurate. And of course, not 100% of the events that happened are emphasized. It's important to remember that this is more of a reinterpretation that's closer to the mythical. I've decided to split the video into chapters, and we'll discuss everything with spoilers. If you haven't seen Batman Azteca yet, watch it before returning. Batman Azteca features dialogue foreshadowing the future and clear nods to classic Detective Comics characters. There are also visions about Yawali's destiny and even elements that, for the Mexica, were omens of tragedy. In this case, we're going to focus on three elements that I think are the most important: Yawali's visions, the omen of the comet, and the ivy in the forest. The story begins with our young protagonist, Quetzalcoatl, trapped in a nightmare where fire, ashes, and death surround him everywhere. A huge bull rises nearby, and this animal faces a gigantic bat. While Yawali is trapped in the middle of the confrontation, even though the bull is not defeated, the bat does not allow this young man to escape too far. A scene that reveals more than it appears, as from this point on, whatever Yawali chooses, his fate is already sealed, which I find quite interesting since he isn't even devoted to the Bat God. Initially, he sees it as a farce and pointless, but later becomes a warrior under his protection. The arrival of Cortez and his men on the Gulf Coast is the first move that sets the path for these visions to become reality. And we can also see some other small signs or references both to the traditional Detective Comics universe and to the ancient beliefs of our Mexican ancestors. For example, when Cortez came before Yawali's father, Chief Taltacotzin, the Spaniard presented himself as a respectful, kind man with intentions to explore our territory and spread the word of his god. This sharply contrasts with his dark greed and lust for power, doing whatever is necessary to achieve his goal, even if he has to sacrifice his own people. That said, I think portraying Hernan Cortez as two-faced in this story was an excellent choice. Like other versions and adaptations of the character, the nuances of this villain's true personality were already there even before he got his famous split face near the end of the movie. After multiple confrontations between Yawali and Cortez, and as both evolved in personality, motivation, and image, the warrior finally realizes his visions were real. Cortez represented that gigantic bull, and the young Yawali, scared and trying to escape, had been completely consumed by the thirst for revenge. After the death of his former home and also his father, he thus became the Bat Warrior, although this can also be interpreted as the reincarnation of Yawali after his sacrifice. The red and death-filled scene had also broken the boundary of those dreams. Although at the end of the story, Hernan Cortez must retreat from the battle, referencing the historical Night of Sorrows. The Templo Mayor massacre and Moctezuma's death had already occurred, even regardless of the outcome of this battle. The vision also suggests that the real war was already lost, since Tenochtitlan was destined to fall. Even after Yawali's warnings to Moctezuma, when our protagonist reaches Tenochtitlan, the appearance of the conquistadors was inevitable, and once they present themselves before the emperor, the whole city can see a comet in the sky. The movie shows that everyone, even Moctezuma, was initially confused. They didn't know if the bad omen referred to the arrival of these people, whom they mistook for gods, or if it was the comet. It was announcing that the Mexicas would be punished for having doubted these visitors and for having let them in. Yoka, in fact, he plays a very important role here, but we'll get into the details of his story later. In particular, at that time, the Mexicas, even though they had a more precise understanding of the universe, much better than that of Europe in that era. It must be noted, as mentioned in the movie, they viewed this phenomenon as a sign of misfortune. Cortez, meanwhile, came from lands where people still believed the universe revolved around Earth, as their Bible claimed. He knew, according to science, that the comets in the sky were spheres of gas, and he knew how to take advantage of the people's beliefs to get lodging and some benefits for himself and his men, while secretly planning his next moves to plunder and subdue this city. In the movie, Moctezuma saw the comet when he first met Hernan. Historically, this sighting occurred between 1515 and 1516, a few years before the conquistadors arrived. However, as I mentioned before, this adaptation is not entirely accurate with the timeline. Similarly, this phenomenon was seen as a sign foreshadowing the fall of Tenochtitlan. And again, even though the sighting of this comet did not happen exactly as it did in the movie, still, I've always found this phenomenon's appearance curious and strange. Right around then, just before the fall of the largest, most powerful city in our history, an event that changed forever everything we were and everything we believed. After those conquerors forced their beliefs, their God, and their religion as an absolute truth upon our ancestors, after subduing them by force, resulting in our present reality. Clearly, everyone is free to believe in whatever they want. But personally, I've always wondered, what would we be like today? If those ancient beliefs hadn't been lost, would we still worship those gods? Or similarly, would Catholicism and Christianity have eventually reached our continent? The movie inevitably makes you reflect on this topic because whether we like it or not, everything we are in the present is a result of. Do you think the appearance of this comet really foreshadowed what was to come? Do you think the gods were really trying to communicate with their worshippers, or was this event simply a coincidence? Share your thoughts below. Now, a very important scene is also the encounter with the forest ivy, when Yowali had just escaped the massacre caused by the Spaniards. This character literally revealed the plot of the entire movie to us from the beginning, but just like Yowali, we understood little or nothing about the journey that was just beginning.
You're not dead, are you? Now what you saw has happened. Not everything has happened yet. There's still time. What is this place, the beginning and the end?
This mystical being speaks about the death of Yowali and those ruins where the statue of the god is found. Sinacon refers to this place as the beginning and the end, because the end of Yowali's story as a mortal happens here. But in reality, this was just the start of the Bat Warrior myth. It may seem confusing at first, but all these dialogues make sense and were carried out exactly as intended. The second time Yowali meets this being, our protagonist dies. He shows himself more open to interpreting his visions after everything he has been through. But even so, he still isn't able to decipher the words of the Ivy, who mentions empires clashing, some falling and others rising, referring to the imminent victory of the Spaniards and the fall of Tenochtitlan.
People transform and the gods choose their emissaries, whether they know it or not. It offers balance, never revenge, but yes, sacrifice, because everything is an eternal movement.
I don't understand you. It also discusses the gods selecting their emissaries. Here it means Zinakon protects Yowali and also refers to Yoka, who will soon be tricked by a god. It references sacrifice, not revenge, echoing the justice, not revenge theme from Batman, which reflects his character's evolution in several stories. Once he understands that his symbol is more than just a personal struggle to punish others, the result of blind rage, in reality, Batman represents something much greater. Despite the darkness, it's a symbol of hope, resilience, and also of continuing to fight against adversity, elements that are perfectly reflected in the final battle. When Yowali stops hiding in the shadows and stops being just a rumor of the night, he becomes the inspiration for the other warriors. In the Aztec Batman movie, we have three gods from the Mexica Pantheon who are of great importance in the story. Understanding them a little better really helps to understand why certain events happen in this adaptation. In the case of Huitzilopochtli, he was the main god of the Mexicas, the god of the sun and of war. The Mexicas believed that the universe depended on the energy of the sun and that it had to be fed with human sacrifices to maintain cosmic order. In fact, these kinds of scenes are seen in the movie El de Yoka, where they believed that by sacrificing more people, they would be able to make the comet in the sky disappear. He is the one who gets the worst of everything that happened during the story, and all this after being deceived by Tezcatlipoca. Curiously, although Huitzilopochtli was Tenochtitlan's main symbol, he never appeared in the entire movie, just like Yoka. All the time we only saw Tezcatlipoca in front of us. Now, speaking of Tezcatlipoca, he reflects an interesting contrast. Unlike Huitzilopochtli, Tezcatlipoca was the god of the night sky, darkness, providence, and destiny, also known for being a capricious and fickle entity. He was often shown with an obsidian mirror on his chest or leg, symbolizing his vision. Although in the movie they portray him as a kind of evil god, his role in Mexica culture is more complex than portrayed here. As one of the four founding gods of the world, according to ancient beliefs, as I mentioned, Tezcatlipoca was seen as a fickle entity. He wasn't entirely evil, but he was known for providing wealth and power, yet he also tested arrogance and could take away everything you owned. In the case of Yoka, in the movie we can notice that he is a person who apparently only cares about continuing to be the high priest of Tenochtitlan, because otherwise he was nobody. Did he feel insignificant? Yoka, after speaking with Huitzilopochtli, or at least that's what he believed because of his advice, the Spaniards were allowed to enter, claiming that they were gods. And also, under this deception, he made sure to satisfy with sacrifices that thirst for faith that Huitzilopochtli supposedly needed. There comes a point in the story when Moctezuma stops believing in the advice of this high priest and banishes him from the city. Yoka knew he had to offer a great sacrifice to the sun god, which is why he ended up sacrificing his own mother and brothers. In order to regain his position, this whole journey had actually been a test from Tezcatlipoca. He had been manipulating Yoka from the very beginning. He was the one who gave him power as a high priest, only to take everything away from him later. Yoka's mistake was offering many people from Tenochtitlan as sacrifices, and once exiled, even his own family, yet he never considered sacrificing himself, despite supposedly being the strongest believer in Huitzilopochtli. Just as I told you, Tezcatlipoca manifested as a fickle and capricious entity. Once Yoka realizes everything he has done and the way he was deceived by Tezcatlipoca, he ends up going insane, now blindly obeying this deceitful god and causing the death of Moctezuma. What's more, to Moctezuma in his final moments, it was also revealed to him that his death was a punishment for having acted out of fear since the arrival of the Spaniards. Because of his fear and terrible leadership, he not only lost the trust of the people, but the entire empire had already been doomed. Without a Khan. That figure we see from the beginning of the movie is the bat god in the Mexica tradition. That is, yes, his figure was truly worshipped. Don't think it's an invention exclusive to this adaptation. He represented the terror of the night and the hope of rebirth. He was associated with the underworld, fertility, transformation, omens, sacrifices, and the life-death cycle. Elements that appear throughout the entire movie from the very beginning. So now that we already have a mention and understanding of what this bat god was, I think a lot of details about Aztec Batman become clearer, especially those mysterious visions of Yowali and also the end of the story where the Bat Warrior opens his eyes again, but this time transformed into something more. In short, once Yowali becomes hope or inspiration for the rest of his people, could we say that he already possesses all the characteristics of the god without a Cain? And when he sacrifices his life in battle for the good of others, he also gains regeneration and transformation. To be honest, I think all those elements that represented the gods are very well incorporated into the story. For my part, I think it's one of the details I like most about the movie. The differences between the Spanish and the Mexica are more than evident in this story. especially when it comes to beliefs. That is, while the conquerors believed in a single god whose word had to be spread, at the same time they eradicated the worship of other deities by blood. The Mexica had several figures to whom they paid tribute. One fact that has always seemed very interesting to me is astrology in that era, something that is discussed a bit in some dialogues. And the thing is, even though the Spaniards had made important advances with the mastery of iron and steel, firearms, and ocean navigation, their knowledge about the universe was imprecise and even wrong. The Mexica calendar was more accurate than the European one in that regard. Both sides had their own interpretations of what they saw and knew. Returning to the example of the comet, the Spaniards knew they were just spheres of gas, but they believed that everything in the universe revolved around the Earth. And meanwhile, the Mexicas knew that our planet was the one that revolved around the sun, but they believed that comets were more interpretative. The movie tries to reflect that clash between two completely different worlds on more than one occasion. For the Mexicas, gold didn't matter, while for the conquerors, it was almost the only reason to be here. In these newly discovered lands, according to them,
we have known them for many suns.
Some have criticized the movie as Hispanophobic, but I believe it deserves more attention. I mean, yes, the story is told from Yawali's perspective, but there are also those details that portray the Mexica as imperfect, performing sacrifices based on their beliefs. Yoka going crazy after being deceived, and Moctezuma despised by his people, being an incapable emperor who led all of Tenochtitlan to ruin. After falling victim to fear and uncertainty, after hearing the stories about the power of the Spaniards. And this is something that isn't emphasized in the movie, and maybe it could go unnoticed if history isn't your strong suit. But during Cortez's journey through what is now Mexican territory, he managed to forge an alliance with the Tlaxcaltecas. In fact, the Cholula massacre was coordinated by these two forces, and later, thanks to their crucial support, that's how Hernan managed to subdue Tenochtitlan itself. Despite the differences between the cultures, I think it's very simplistic to reduce this movie to bad guys versus good guys, when objectively the closest thing to reality is that they were all bad. Tenochtitlan also subdued smaller peoples, which is why the Tlaxcaltecas joined Cortez. First of all, as I mentioned before, the movie really invites you to reflect on this topic and to learn more about our history, no matter what continent you're from. It's still an uncomfortable, debated topic, which is why I liked Aztec Batman more than expected. Using key historical passages, highlighting cultural contrasts, and making the gods of the Mexica Pantheon central to the story, but adding that mystical touch that makes this bat god very interesting to watch. The end of the movie culminates in the Night of Sorrows and the resurgence of Xinacan, in addition to the arrival of a new villain in the story, who in this case seems to be a reinterpretation of the penguin Oswald Cobblepot, making reference to diseases. And during the period of the Conquest, it is known that the Mexica and other peoples did not have immune defenses. The Spaniards brought measles, typhus, smallpox, influenza, and other respiratory diseases, which severely impacted the indigenous population. Smallpox, especially, was a major factor that helped weaken the Mexica warriors during the siege of Tenochtitlan and helped facilitate their victory. This is a topic that wasn't touched on at all during this first part of Aztec Batman. But in case there's a sequel, well, you can already get an idea of what's coming next. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video to catch new content. Would you like a sequel to Aztec Batman? We have to show support. Currently, you can find this movie on the Home Box Office Max platform. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you'd like to visit another universe soon and leave me your suggestions. As for me, I have nothing else to say except thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you soon. My name is Alex for the NEGAYO channel. See you later.